Welcome, everyone, to the 8th episode of our 3rd season of the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology. We're sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni, and joining me today is Senior Cade Nelson. All of our work can be found on our website, delphibracketology.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets for information. As we get closer to Selection Sunday, which is just a few days away, we're going to begin this week like we begin every week, and that is with our Indiana report. And Purdue and Indiana are poised to be well represented in the NCAA tournament. Indiana defeated Purdue for the second time on Saturday at Mackey Arena, which really boosts Indiana's resume. They are likely up to a 3 seed at the moment, and they're going to have to win a couple games this week in order to stay at that. It's highly competitive, the 3 and 4 seed line. Purdue, for us, is still on the 1 seed line. A lot of Purdue fans are hitting the panic button because of their recent struggles, but their body of work and their wins overall still have Purdue on the 1 seed line. You kind of want to root for UCLA to lose and maybe Texas and Baylor to lose to make sure Purdue gets that 1 seed. But things are looking up for the 2 main rivals in the state of Indiana. And we have conference tournaments starting, and Indiana State will start here on Thursday. Cade, talk about the Sycamores and Ball State.
Yeah, so Indiana State is playing Evansville in their first round. And the reason they got there was they lost to Belmont and they lost to Missouri State. So I think if they would have beat Belmont and maybe Missouri State too, they would have been playing in that next, or like they would have gotten the bye. They wouldn't have to have this play-in game here. But I think playing the 12 seed, I'm confident in what they can do, and I don't see why they wouldn't keep going through the tournament. And for Ball State, they play at Akron and at home against Toledo before their conference tournament. So with them being 4th in their conference and an overall record of 20-9, I think winning these 2 games would be good momentum for them going into the tournament.
So every week we're going to talk about teams that are moving up and teams that are moving down. There are a lot of teams that are somewhat set in a range of seeds for us and probably for the NCAA committee as well. But Cade, who is moving up for you in our bracket?
For me, I think it's Kansas State. They've won their last 5 of 9, so it's not like they've won like 8 or something like crazy like that. But, losing in the Big 12 for Kansas State doesn't necessarily hurt them because all they're losing is quad 1 games. So, being able to win those 5 quad 1 games in the Big 12 is just adding to their total of quad 1 and 2 wins. So they're now at 12 total quad 1 and 2 wins. They're 9-6 in quad 1 by itself, which is equivalent to a lot of other 1 seeds, maybe with not as many losses, but 9 still being a good number in quad 1. And then many other bracketologists see them moving up to the 2 seed line with that amount of wins that they have.
For me, it's Mississippi State that has been moving up. They were out of our bracket, and they're still on the bubble. They're going to have to do some work. They have won 7 of 9 games to get above the cut line. They won at Arkansas, which for us is a 6 seed. They beat Missouri, beat Texas A&M. Those are 3 teams that are ahead of them from that conference in the bracket. And so they're moving up. They're 11 seed. They may be in a play-in game for us. They have games remaining at home against South Carolina and at Vanderbilt. They should win the South Carolina game. If they win the Vanderbilt game, which Vanderbilt's playing a lot better nowadays, that's really going to put them in good position to make the tournament. But if there are teams moving up, there are teams that are also moving down. Cade, who's dropping for you?
Yeah, the team dropping for me is Iowa State. They're 1-6 in their last 7 games. And for Iowa State, this is where losing in the Big 12 hurts them. The reason I say that is because they don't really have a lot of wins on the road. So when they're not able to, pick up just a couple decent games in Big 12, it's not really helping their below-average non-conference strength of schedule. So when you lose, when you have this crazy losing streak, especially being on the 4 seed line at the reveal, going 0-3 since then, we have them at a 6 seed now. Just this little slump here, along with not having any road wins, really hurts them. But they don't have any bad losses, so I don't see them dropping much further.
For me, it's Virginia. They were a 3 seed in the reveal. We have them now down on the 4 seed line. They've lost 2 in a row. And then they've barely beat Notre Dame and Louisville, 2 of the bottom teams in the ACC. So they're likely down to that 4 seed and continue to fall. They play Clemson tonight, which is a really important game. Virginia's going to be in the tournament. It's just where their seeding is. So this is the start of conference tourney play. There are tournaments that are being played. Those teams, when they win, they get an automatic berth into the NCAA tournament. It's worth watching. A lot of rivalries, a lot of close games, and the fans really appreciate that. We're going to run down this week's tournaments with the favorites real quick for you so you can turn in. The Atlantic Sun has already started with their first games last night. Liberty is the favorite at 24-7.
Yeah, then we have the Sun Belt Conference where Southern Mississippi is the favorite at 25-6.
You have the Horizon League, which is local here. Youngstown State at 23-8 is your favorite.
The Patriot Conference, Colgate is the favorite at 23-8 as well.
The Ohio Valley will see Morehead State taking the lead at 21-10 into the conference tournament.
For the Big South, UNC Asheville at 24-7 is your favorite.
The Northeast Conference, really, Merrimack and Stonehill are probably the favorites, but they're ineligible due to just transferring into the NCAA. They have to wait a few years before they can make the tournament. So look for Farley Dickinson, I hope I said that right, at 17-14 to maybe get that bid.
For the Missouri Valley Conference, we have Bradley at 23-8 being our favorite.
Add Drake into there as well. That's going to be a really good tournament, as we talked about with Indiana State. The West Coast Conference, Gonzaga at 25-5, and St. Mary's probably co-favorites in that tournament.
In the Southern Conference, we have Furman at 24-7, probably being our favorite.
Big Sky, Eastern Washington just lost a game in conference, but they're 22-8. Look for Eastern Washington to be the favorite.
In the Southland Conference, we have Northwestern State at 20-10 being the favorite, maybe trying to pick up a little bit of Northwestern's momentum.
And the last two are also bid thieves. If these two teams don't win, there is an outside chance that they get an at-large bid. That is Oral Roberts, who is 27-4 and undefeated in the Summit. We'll look for them to win and be in the tournament.
And then in the Colonial Conference, we have Charleston at 28-3. We've been talking about them on the bubble all year for an at-large bid.
So those are the conference tournament favorites that are starting this week, and it's time for the NCAA committee to make some tough decisions starting next week. We'll share some of our thoughts on those decisions coming up after the break.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need a managed Wi-Fi service with advanced Blast Wi-Fi. Blast Wi-Fi systems provide ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Available from Mulberry Telecommunications, Blast Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections so you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Mulberry Telecommunications is always here to help you should any issues arise. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, and it's a blast. Blast Wi-Fi is now included with Mulberry Telecommunications fiber internet packages. Contact Mulberry Telecommunications at 296-2885 today to get started.
Throw it up for Tillman.
Whoa,
My goodness.
122.60 for Penn. What a swim. Six of them.
Welcome back to the Bracket Report. I'm Brian Tonsoni with Cade Nelson. We're at the studios here with ISC Sports Network. We're sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. And now we're going to talk about what the committee has to go through in making some really tough decisions coming up along the line. So we had a couple really big meetings in the last week to come up with a seed list. It's changing constantly. We made some changes this morning after a meeting. But let's go through a couple of tough decisions. If you want to see our seed line and our bracket, it is out on our website, delphibracketology.com. Cade, what decision is going to be tough for us as we go forward next week?
Yeah, I don't think we've really mentioned it much in our last couple of meetings, but San Diego State is a team to me that might be a little overlooked. I think their net is 15 right now, and they have a good amount of quad one wins. And for a team like Virginia that's above them with, I think, a 28 net, and Virginia being a team that might be on the decline, I think San Diego State's metrics, and I think they might have 8 or 9 quad 1 and 2 wins combined, maybe even higher. That might be able to boost them up, especially since we feel the net might be something that can really help teams this year.
You're going to hear a lot of discussion about the net ranking, and it's just offense and defensive efficiency. We've talked about it all year long, and a lot of people say it's just a sorting tool. But we think it's more than that. As we've looked back over 3 years of records and where we've made mistakes, we think it does reflect the quality of a team. Maybe not San Diego State being the 15th best team because the net is 15, but we think that puts them in the 3, 4, 5 range maybe. And then we look at what do they do against their competition. We are trying to do better this year at looking at a team's overall resume with all of the pieces, the metrics, the road wins, the non-conference, and say, is this team better than we think, the same, or a little bit lower than what some of the measurements are? And then we're going to use the net as that setting point. So, the 15 seed for San Diego State would put them at a 4 seed line. Is their resume good enough to stay on the 4 seed line, or should it fall a little bit? And we think it's maybe the lack of wins or the quality of wins is just a little bit enough to drop them to the 4 seed line. But we had them as a 6 previous. But it's really hard when you have a Mountain West versus the Big 12. Mm-hmm. The Big 12, every game's a quad 1 win. Not every game in the Mountain West is. So how do you compare those? And we really believe the KenPom and the BPI and Sagarin and those things really do give an indication of the quality of teams and should be taken into consideration, and that's going to help San Diego State in this tough decision. So our next one is North Carolina. Just the name on the front of the jersey says to go in to the bracket, but the results on the court say no, they should not be in. So, Cade, your thoughts on the Tar Heels? Are they in or are they out, or what do they have to do?
I would say we talked this morning that I think we have to see North Carolina beat Duke and then maybe win a couple games in their conference tournament. But I had a couple scenarios down here for you just because we always say every year that the conference tournament doesn't really matter that much, or the committee might, have their final selection in before the conference tournament is really over. So if North Carolina beats Duke but loses in the first round of their conference tournament, are they in or are they out?
I would have them out.
Yeah.
I would have them out. I think, what do they have? 1 quad 1 win, and if Virginia loses tonight to Clemson, they might lose that by number. I think they're out if they just beat Duke. I don't think I think they got to do more.
Yeah. So if they lose to Duke but then make it to the championship game of the conference tournament, do you think they're in, or do you think the committee has already made that selection?
That's going to be interesting because of who they play and who they bracket. I think they had a chance of being in. The conference tournaments, a lot of this selection and seeding is done Thursday, Friday night. So the ACC tournament starts early, though. Their championship is on Saturday. So if they get to the semifinals, that's going to be known on Friday. They may be able to sneak into that last 4 in if they lose to Duke and then make it to the semifinals or finals. I think Duke is the key, though, overall.
Yeah. Bottom line is they got to beat Duke.
So that's the stuff we talk about in the tournament. And really, we want the conference tournaments to matter. But when they meet on Tuesday and start voting, and Wednesday they start voting and seeding the top, 4 or 5 lines, and then Thursday night, by Friday they're down to 9 and 10 seed, and that's really the quarterfinals of some of these major conference tournaments. I think that maybe there are 2 or 3 spots for teams getting in based on the conference tournament, and maybe an outlier. If a team really runs the table, they might move from a 7 to a 6 seed at the last moment in a scrubbing process. But I don't really think the conference tournaments matter as much as we believe they should. Kentucky. Let's talk about Kentucky. Kentucky a couple weeks ago was 10 or 11 and almost out, and then they've won 4 really good games, 3 quad 1, and they've also won beat Auburn at home, a quad 2, but beat them by like 26 points or so. 5 or 6 seed lines just seems awful high for a team that was so low.
Yeah.
But their resume really speaks to a solid team. Your thoughts on Kentucky?
I would say the main thing for Kentucky is this little run they've been able to get on. I think if they carry that throughout the end of the season and really show the committee that they're turning it around at the right time, along with maybe getting their net down into the teens, we don't typically see teams as big as Kentucky, as big name as Kentucky, being that low, especially with a net in the teens. So I think if they are able to win a game here at the end by a good margin, develop their net a little bit, catch some momentum, I think the committee might not be able to really dismiss them all the way down to the 6th seed.
They have Vanderbilt tomorrow on Wednesday, and then they play at Arkansas. That will be a quad 2 or quad 3 win against Vanderbilt and a quad 1 win at Arkansas. If they get those 2 wins, I think definitely a 5 seed for us. And probably they're in the 5, 6, 7 range. Most bracketologists have Kentucky in that range. They should, if they split and win a game in the SEC tournament, again, I think you're going to see them a little bit higher than a lot of people thought they were 2 weeks ago. Our next one is Tennessee. We had a discussion. Tennessee's metrics are fantastic. Their recent play, not so fantastic in losing a few games and then just not playing well. Low offensive production recently for Tennessee. Tennessee has lost 4 out of 5. And to some good teams on the road at Kentucky and at Texas A&M. They finish with Arkansas tonight and then at Auburn. They need to play well or they're going to fall. We had a discussion whether they should be a 3 or a 4 and comparing them to Marquette, Indiana, Gonzaga. We thought 3 of those teams should be on the 3 line and 1 on the 4 seed line, but their net is 3.
Yeah.
Their metrics are so good, but their recent play is not, and we got to remember body of work, correct?
Yeah. Houston was a 5 seed last year, right?
Correct.
At what was their net, 4?
4 or 5.
Yeah, something single digits. So I think Tennessee's ability to have a couple quad 1 wins, although there might not be a lot or, they have losses outside of quad 1, I think if they're able to maintain their net the way it is with these last couple games coming up, if they lose, then they might be down to the 4 seed line. But if it's still close and they don't necessarily blow these teams out, I think they stay on the 3 seed line because they've shown early on that they can pick up wins, and they've shown that they are a good basketball team. They're efficient, and they know how to play well. So I think with those metrics, you can't overlook that.
There are 2 teams with really good metrics behind them, Gonzaga 9 and UConn 8 on that 4 seed line. So it's not like a high metric of 3 on the net and other metrics automatically move you up. You've got to win games, and right now they have 9 quad 1 and 2 wins, which really puts them below Gonzaga, Xavier, and Connecticut, which is below them. So Tennessee needs to win a couple of games here to maintain their 3 seed line. Otherwise, obviously if Indiana, Marquette, or Gonzaga were to lose at some point, that could affect them. But let's finish segment 2 here with the bubble. Our last 6 teams in right now are in this order. We have West Virginia, Auburn, Mississippi State, Boise State, Wisconsin, and Arizona State, and we've moved them the last 2 days. But those are 6 teams that are on the bubble. West Virginia gets a huge win last night on the road that really over Iowa State. So we kind of think that they're not in jeopardy of falling out, still have to win some games. But talk about those 6 teams and the tough decisions we have to make there on the bubble.
Yeah, I think one of the tougher decisions, we've been dogging on Auburn all year. I think that just looking at their resume over the last couple of weeks, I was a fan of Auburn at first, but then when you keep looking at it, they just don't get the big wins. Their net isn't crazy. Their road record is pretty average. I think that their net might inflate their resume, which will hold them in, but I would see them maybe being in the last 2 or 3 out, especially when you have a team like Wisconsin. I think they're in because of last year's Rutgers. Their ability for Wisconsin to get the wins in quad 1 holds them in. And then Arizona State, obviously the last team in, is going to be back and forth no matter what. But, yeah, for me it's Auburn maybe moving down a couple spots.
Auburn has lost, and recency is not the issue, but I think it does play into the committee's minds. They have only won 3 of their last 10 games. And then they finish with at Alabama, a 1 seed, and then host Tennessee, a 3 seed. Like they're going to have to win a game or 2 games to stay in. They lose that, and they are really in trouble. And you're going to have to make a run in the tournament. That would make them 19-12 and 2-10 in quad 1. So Auburn is a team that a lot of people would think is not in jeopardy. But, yeah, we're really watching them and thinking that they're likely to fall out. I'm not sold on Wisconsin. I think if they beat Purdue, yes, they're in. If not, they're going to have to win a game in the top in the conference tournament. Quickly here, teams that are out: Utah State, Michigan, Oklahoma State, North Carolina, and about 6 others that we're keeping an eye on. Who are you looking at there that might jump in?
Since I probably shouldn't talk about Oregon again this week, I'll talk about Michigan. Being an Ohio State fan, I guess I'll root for the rival. They have 9 quad 1 and 2 wins. They have a pretty good record at 17-12, and they play at Illinois, who lost to Ohio State. So maybe we can do the 2 for there. And they play at IU, and last time they played them, they lost by 1 at home. So being with both these games on the road, it's going to be tough for them. But if they can maybe pick up 1 and then maybe win a game in the conference tournament, they'll be pretty solid. Also, the majority of their losses are in quad 1, so they don't have a lot of bad losses.
Yeah, I think Michigan's the team to watch there. I would also, Penn State lost a 19-point lead at home against Rutgers, was really in position to maybe jump in as well from the Big Ten. We'll talk about the Big Ten here in a little bit. But there are a lot of interesting discussions going on by a lot of the bracketologists, and the NCAA committee starts convening next week to make these decisions. But stick with us after the break. We'll discuss the Big Ten and some games to watch going forward.
Ball here. Harris scores. With 19 seconds left.
Fake players, big boy. I'm telling you right now, that's awesome. I love it.
Has to finish.
You get a layup taken and an and one. Out of here.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
You are watching the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology, sponsored again by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. It's now time to talk the Big Ten, and we're going to talk a little more in depth than we normally do. But let's run down the seeds, and we kind of hinted upon Michigan and Penn State in the last segment. But Purdue is a 1 seed. They need to do some work to hold on to it. Indiana is a 3, not a lock. Maryland and Northwestern are around the 7 seed line. Michigan State, Iowa, and Illinois are going to be somewhere on the 8 or 9 seed line, with a couple of wins could move up for the Big Ten. We think all of those teams are locks to be in. That's 7 teams are pretty sure to be in. Rutgers at number 10 has lost a lot and have an injury concern. They need to do some winning. And Wisconsin at 11 and 12, that's going to be a real tough ask to beat Purdue and stay in the tournament. So we look for 8 at least, maybe a 9th team. But, Cade, as you look at the Big Ten, the tournament, the last 2 regular season games are being played. There's some important games going on in the Big Ten. And we focus on the Big Ten because we're here in Indiana. What do you think is going to happen, and who has the toughest road ahead to try to stay in or move up?
I would say the toughest road, we just mentioned Michigan. I think their 2 games playing in the top of the Big Ten, I think that's going to be tough for them, especially being out. They really need 1 win at the most. And then, like you said, Rutgers, after been struggling recently, and at first, we thought, they have a couple good wins. They're pretty solid where they're at. I think having these games at Minnesota and Northwestern, the Minnesota game should be a pretty comfortable game for them, and then the Northwestern game will be a game for them to show that they're getting their momentum back, they're finding their way, and if they pull out the win at home, I think that keeps them pretty solidly in.
So Michigan's just got it tough. Man, they're at Illinois and at Indiana. I do think maybe a split and a win in the Big Ten tournament might be enough to get them in, but that's where you want to watch if you're a Michigan fan. Rutgers, with that win, probably did enough prior to the injury to stay in, but they're like Auburn. If if they were to struggle down the stretch and in the Big Ten tournament, they could be out, especially with some bid thieves, some conference tournaments not going the way everyone would expect them to do. Wisconsin, I think it comes down to Purdue. You beat Purdue, you're in. You lose to Purdue, now you got to do some stuff in the Big Ten tournament to stay in, even though they have a ton of wins. But watch for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Lost that game against Rutgers. Here's their schedule. They're at Northwestern and then host Maryland. They got to win both. If they win both, that puts them in a good spot. I think they have enough quality wins to try to get in, but then they're going to have to win at least a game or two. They're going to have to go on a winning streak. But, I would love to see Pickett in. I love Coach Shrewsbury. Would love to see Penn State get in, even over Wisconsin or Michigan, kind of rooting for the underdog. But Minnesota, not much to play for, right? They're in the bottom of the league. They're going to be the 14th seed in the big tournament, but they can play spoiler. And I believe both games are home. I'd have to really double-check I think – They host Rutgers at home and Wisconsin at home. And so Minnesota can really upset the apple cart with some of these Big Ten bubble teams. Because if you lose now to Minnesota, and that's a probably 3 or 4 loss on the road, that's just really damaging when there's 4 or 5 teams that you're really comparing with, even though we've always said one game doesn't move you up and down, but when you're tight with 6 or 7 teams, and a really bad loss at this point in the season can really hurt you. So a lot of conference tournaments. Find out where they are if you stream and have some access to ESPN Plus and so forth. A lot of great basketball in those conference tournaments, but there's also a couple huge games. Cade, go ahead and share us. I'll take the first one, then we'll end with you. But I'm going to watch Kansas and Texas. That's a seed line game. I think Kansas is entrenched in the 1 seed no matter what happens in their games. But I also think Texas has an outside chance of maybe being there if Purdue falters. So if Texas should win and Purdue loses a few games, I think that's a game where the number 1 seed will be discussed next week. That is Saturday at 4 o'clock. And Cade, your game to watch.
My game to watch is Duke versus North Carolina, the big rivalry game. Everyone wants to watch it anyways. So after you're done watching Kansas versus Texas at 4, you can find them on Saturday at 6:30. And like we've said for North Carolina, they pretty much have to win this game to have a chance to be in the bracket. And for Duke, being able to win on the road against your rival just, gives you a great little umph at the very end, right before you play in the bracket.
So when you're wondering what your team's doing, it is something we get a lot of questions about. What does our team have to do to get in? Please understand that they have to win, and then there's other teams around them too. It is a comparison often of 2 or 3 teams just around your favorite team. So it's really, you got to look at it in a big picture that we cannot say 2 wins and Michigan's definitely in, because they can get 2 wins and everyone else can win as well, and they stay put on the outside of the line. We just will answer you on social media as the best of the scenarios, but please ask us any and all questions, where that Twitter handle is at Delphi Brackets, and you can find out our information on our webpage at delphibracketology.com, and we'll be glad to interact with you as much as we possibly can. We'll also have a podcast scheduled Thursday, where it might be a mailbag question if you want to join us live on Thursday night at 7:30, where we discuss some things. And we have some old podcasts. We had a really great show last night as well, if you're looking for some more bracket discussion. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bracket Report. Again, thanks to ISC Sports Network for hosting our show. And again, it's at Delphi Brackets on Twitter and DelphiBracketology.com. So for Cade Nelson, I'm Brian Tonsoni. Thank you for watching, and until next week, may your favorite team get those last couple of wins and win in the tournament and get selected on Selection Sunday.
Oh, baby! That got me awake. The worm has turned in Logansport.
Look at that play.
The lob underneath, and if you don't get any picture perfect more than that.
That young man will be glad that our cameras were here for tonight's contest.